Hello. Thank you for joining us on this Open 5G conference. Today's session is Evolution to Hybrid and Multicloud. I'm Azhar Sayeed from Red Hat, and joining me today are panelists from different organizations around the globe. First, Nezar Alhuzaimi from Saudi Telecom. Hello, Nezar.
Hello, everyone.
Next, Paul Grønsund from Telenor. Hello, Paul.
Hello, everyone.
And Juan Carlos from Telefónica. Hello, Juan.
Hello. Nice to be here with you.
Thank you to all of you for taking the time to join us here. As I specified on the topic in terms of evolution to hybrid and multi-cloud, we are increasingly seeing telcos move their software from private cloud infrastructure also to public cloud and build a hybrid cloud environment, both in the context of telco and IT. And we are also now seeing their need to move from not just hybrid cloud alone, but to probably multi-cloud infrastructures. There are several reasons why they're doing that, primarily because they want to be able to leverage the catalog that's available within the public cloud infrastructure, and also to actually capitalize on the talent and the capabilities that are available associated with the public cloud so that they can leverage it as part of their own app infrastructure and app dev infrastructure. Now, what we are increasingly seeing, especially as you go deploy edge, is that already that private cloud infrastructure is expanding to different footprints, and you're already going on and creating multiple different clusters. Now, several telcos have built several different strategies. And this is what we are really here to learn from these telcos on this particular panel. So first, I'm going to start off with some questions. First question probably goes to Nezar from STC. Nezar, I know that STC has actually, built not only a private cloud, but also now actively looking towards hybrid cloud. And you also operate your own public cloud infrastructure within the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. So considering your telco cloud model, what plans do you have to extend outside your own environment towards a public cloud, perhaps?
Yes. Actually, what we learned from our telco cloud journey, starting from 2017, that it is not about technology only. It's about more also about operating model. It's about partnership. It's about also business model. Similarly, in the public cloud, we believe we have to do the same. So if we meet some criteria in public cloud, like better time to the market, better TCO, and based on the nature of the workload, we will go to public cloud. But not for each and every use case. We preferably look at private 5G and edge use cases as suitable candidates. We believe it's with the merge of the softwares and developers capabilities that have hyperscaler, it will be adding great value. But if we look at normal core functions like 4G, 5G, mobile broadband, we are testing, we are seeing if it is fit with it's setting, securing our customer data, if it is fitting with the cybersecurity requirement. We will also study them and go also to this direction.
Very nice, Nezar. Thank you. It looks like public cloud is certainly part of your, realm in terms of how you're looking at it for the future. But you are saying that you're actually looking at it on a use case by use case in terms of where exactly public cloud fits. Now, exactly. That's really great because I think what you've actually pieced for us is how exactly people want to kind of use some of the public cloud environments in this scenario. Now let me go to Juan Carlos next. Juan Carlos, I know that Telefónica has actually done some announcements as well in terms of public cloud partnerships, in addition to the revamp that you're doing already on the private cloud space. So what is your thought, Juan Carlos, on this topic?
Yeah. Well, as you said, so we have a partnership with all the main cloud providers, public cloud providers. And what we are having is a progressive migration of certain functions to the public cloud. And this is happening as they get to solve the performance issues for running some of these network functions. And also as its economic feasibility is shown. And I'm not talking about theory, I'm talking about actual numbers. So these are two elements. There are others, of course, as the ones mentioned by Nezar regarding security that needs to be solved. And well, what happens now is that initially we are moving to the public cloud some functions with lower requirements in terms of performance and security.
Mm-hmm.
And in any case, in the medium long term, we don't see a scenario of a complete migration to the public cloud of all network functions. We are more in the line, as you said, of a hybrid multi-cloud solution in this sense. Also, something to take into consideration with these plans is that there are factors that may help to accelerate or slow down the process. For instance, the availability of truly cloud-native network functions, so it means functions that you can move seamlessly from one container management environment to another, and also the availability of orchestration mechanisms to facilitate all this management of container-based solutions. And both are necessary for this migration to be safe, frictionless, and happen in a natural way. We are working towards achieving something that is an edge-to-cloud continuum that combines private and public cloud technologies, infrastructures, and services. And in this process, we will need cloud providers, but also technology companies like Red Hat helping us with the right technology and adapting their products to make it happen. For instance, there are two important elements: incorporating telco requirements in the cloud stack, and also facilitating the federation of edge services to enable global edge networks. Mm-hmm. We are talking about cloud edge will play a significant role as well in this migration.
Thank you, Juan Carlos. Actually, you've listed out some interesting points. We'll actually come into that in a little bit later on our panel, in particular in terms of why and what are some of the challenges that you're seeing in that context. But before we go into some of those questions, let me go to Paul Grønsund. Paul, I know that Telenor has been, a big advocate of private and hybrid cloud as well. So what's Telenor's take, Paul, in this space in terms of, are you planning to extend that hybrid model, and how far do you intend to extend that particular hybrid model?
Yeah, well, thanks for the question. I think clearly we are working a lot on this, and we also have, what should I say, have had a public cloud first strategy, particularly on the IT side for a long time, and now lately to see that going more and more also into any type of workloads. So looking historically at it, like for IT and analytics, we have been putting a lot of that into clouds, whereas for the more telco heavy workloads, things like mobile core, we have some challenges, particularly on the regulation side, things like national autonomy. You need to have the public cloud region in the country, and even you need to be sure that if the link outside the country goes down, you should continue to operate. That has not been too easy with any of the public clouds. And of course, there are other challenges, like looking into cost for heavy traffic functions, or even as was mentioned also on the security side. But I think the good thing is that we really see things moving. And as well as what was mentioned is we also have a partnership with all the cloud providers working into how we can solve that and move more and more of the telco into the public cloud as well. So it looks good, and besides that, there are also markets which are not that heavily regulated, where we will see things moving pretty soon, I believe.
Very nice, thank you, Paul. Because you all raised some interesting points again, and actually we'll dive a little bit more into some of those questions. But before I actually get there, one more, maybe I'll come to Juan Carlos this time and say, Juan Carlos, I know that you mentioned some of the IT workloads moving into public cloud perhaps, But do you see yourselves actually just partnering with a single public cloud provider, or do you think it's going to be a multi-cloud kind of strategy between multiple different public cloud providers?
Well, in general, we tend to use several ones.
Mm-hmm.
The reason for not choosing one is that the technology they use or the environment they use is somehow proprietary if you go beyond the basic functionality, and this means that you will need probably to standardize in a different way. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Operators tend to standardize by choosing one technology and then focus all the development on that technology. This is something that, on our view, in the telco sector, you cannot do. So you need always a diversity of supply for every single component, and the computing capacity is a critical infrastructure. It may not fail. And in case the technology that you are using as a basis for that doesn't meet your performance requirements, doesn't meet your security requirements, doesn't meet your efficiency or cost requirements, then you need to have alternatives. Okay, and this is the reason why we strongly believe on multi-cloud, or multiple public clouds combined with private cloud environments as well, multi-cloud. And this is the way we see. For us, it's important that we work with them to ensure that we have portability of these network functions from one to the other. This is a scenario we want to achieve, and this is a scenario for which we will need probably a lot of developments like the platform for orchestration and a lot of automation in managing this complex multi-technology environment.
Mm-hmm. So, Paul, do you have a different opinion in terms of multi-cloud? Or I think Juan Carlos clearly articulated, why they're looking at it in terms of multi-cloud. Do you have a different opinion on that?
No, I fully agree. I think, as I said, we have a public cloud first strategy, but still, as I also mentioned, there's a lot of things that we currently are not that easy to move into public clouds. And as Juan Carlos mentioned, is that in many cases we also need to have kind of a fallback mechanism from, say, public to private. And we might also have kind of disaster recovery, as we use this, or cloud bursting. So I share those views, really. I think the main reason for us to move into a multi-cloud strategy is that we, over time, even though if we want to consolidate things into one cloud platform or one provider instance, we see that there are different requirements coming from the services, where we see certain cloud platforms or providers might excel in certain areas, like moving into, say, analytics, AI, ML type of things. And we might make selections based on what we need for that specific service as well. So it's really, really good to have that flexibility as well. But still, I would like to say that it's not that we want to go crazy and take one application and distribute it around everywhere. We still need to have some limitations in how many cloud platforms we use, specifically within certain service domains, to make it manageable and also reduce the complexity.
Thank you, Paul. I think that makes good sense in terms of, horses for courses is what you're really trying to do in terms of, what's available in each public cloud and how do you make the best benefit out of it. I'm going to switch it a little bit and actually go to Nezar next, but it's based on the points that both of you and Juan Carlos just raised a moment ago, which is, when you have multi-cloud, there are some challenges associated with multi-cloud because each environment is different. So maybe Nezar can start off by saying, Nezar, how do you manage this type of multi-cloud environment? I mean, do you think some unifying layer is interesting or important when you go there? Because otherwise, each cloud model is different. Each cloud operating environment is different. And especially when you're operating a private environment and then in a public environment as well. You have different challenges to deal with. So do you believe that you need something to, create a common environment, a unifying layer perhaps? Let me start off with you and then I'll move back to the others.
Yes, as mentioned by the gentlemen, we need to go to multi-cloud strategy because it's depending on the use case, and this will give us challenge when we're dealing with different hyperscalers for different use case. And to achieve the agility, we believe that we need some thing to manage the life cycle of the workload in the multi-cloud on unified form. And this is what we call at NSTC cloud, multi-cloud management platform. We need to orchestrate between the workload, between the public clouds and private cloud and the edge clouds. We need to monitor the security. We need to monitor the consumptions. We need to integrate for bundling. And we can get some software maybe from one hyperscaler, and we bundle it with other service from other hyperscalers or with the connectivity from our telco. So the answer is yes. We believe we need a unified layers, which is we so call it multi-cloud management platforms.
Interesting. So you really believe, Nezar, that you can, combine capabilities from different clouds to build into a service that you offer to your customers?
Sure, yes.
Very nice. Very nice. So then let me come this time to Paul first. Paul, what's your take on this? Because you also articulated some of the challenges associated with different, multiple clouds and multiple different environments. How do you do the abstraction of lower layer information from these particular clouds? Because we know the AWS environment is very different from that of a Google GCP or, Microsoft Azure with their set of APIs. So how do you manage those different sets and different capabilities together?
I think really that unified layer or orchestration and management across is really important when you have services that span across, say, a public and a private cloud, or potentially also across different public or private clouds. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking more use cases like I was hinting to, like disaster recovery or cloud bursting, or if it's really split due to location, then it's really important. And some important aspects of that has to be like to have common configuration, policy setting, security policies across, really important. And I think, having said that, looking at the portfolio of services that we are running in the clouds, it's not all cloud services that are spanning. Or it's actually not. There are many services that are not spanning different cloud environments. But we still have a multi-cloud strategy. And I think for those cases, it really is not that important. So we try to standardize kind of on which cloud instances from which providers we consume within each service domain within a market, or potentially also globally if we have services of global reach. And in those cases, it's not that important. But of course, there are examples. For instance, like if you move into, say, 5G, and you have a mobile core distributed across central and edge, and those are from different providers, or even linked to public. So then it needs to be in place to have proper security and policies and configuration for sure.
Thank you, Paul, for that answer. Let me go to Juan Carlos and ask, look, both Paul and Nezar talked a little bit about, management and orchestration, but is there also a need for cloud abstraction, because the environments are different between your private cloud and your public cloud environments? Juan Carlos?
Yes. As per our policy is in Telefónica is that workloads are always deployed at the right place with the right technology in every moment. And this means that you need to have probably a common way of managing the different environments, cloud environments you may have, being this private or public. No? And the decision that you will take on placing the workload will be based on many factors, no? Performance, latency, affinity, availability, regulatory topics, security, privacy, cost. So we have seen many of them. and these decisions need to be taken by the operator. No? But the operator needs to somehow interact with these different environments in a similar way. No? And that way, probably we will need this kind of extension to the existing cloud stacks to offer a lifecycle management that fits with the operator requirements. No? That is carrier ready, that is ready for operation of telecom network functions that are critical services in many cases. No? So then I think we need that layer, and this is something that is being worked in the market. So there are initiatives in Linux Foundation like Anuket and others that are looking at having these environments for telcos that can be used across different implementations, both in private and public clouds.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you. I think that makes good sense. Let me just switch over a little bit in terms of questions. And I think, when we talk about public cloud consumption specifically, there are multiple ways we can consume public cloud, infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, or software as a service. Now, the question is what best fits your business strategy? Maybe this time I'll start first with Paul.
Yeah, no, I think basically we are consuming all of these as a service delivery models, and all of them are really important to us. And also we have a clear strategy on everything as a service, and we set targets. But I think like looking a bit at our strategy when it comes to software as a service, because we also have a software as a service first strategy, specifically within IT, when that is possible. And that's really, really important for us to kind of also reduce the amount of resources and work needed to do and manage things and operate things that is not the core of our business, right? But having said that, still, we are also clear on the fact that software as a service might not be the right choice if we are dealing with differentiating services due to competition aspects. That's a bit of overview on this. But basically, all of them are being consumed and really important.
Do you think, Paul, it'll be based on use case or some other mechanism by which you decide to use each one of those services, like software as a service or infrastructure as a service?
Yeah, I think certainly it will, at least considering what's the availability of software as a service today. But I think like what we see is that the use cases within IT is where we, and also analytics for sure, where we consume software as a service more today. But I also think that moving ahead in time, moving forward, I think also the other domains like looking into more network, mobile core as a service are things that will become important. So I think it's also a journey we are on, and I think we will move in all of those directions when ready.
Interesting. Nezar, you have an opinion on this?
I share the same understanding that it's use case based. We will have to use IaaS and PaaS for VNF and CNF, the telco domains, and as well also the infrastructure as a service and platform as a service, and even software as a service in some cases in the IT domain.
Got it. What about you, Juan Carlos?
Well, I also share the opinion of my colleagues. Probably on IaaS and PaaS will be easier to get this common abstraction layer that we were mentioning before. And it's probably more straightforward to use those kind of services. In the case of SaaS, in addition to probably the need for differentiation, there may be other topics to consider. That in some cases, for instance, the SaaS provider is offering its own multi-tenant cloud, and then it's not offering you the chance to use other cloud infrastructure and services, and this is something that we would like to have, this flexibility. And then looking at the SaaS for core and access functions, so it is a challenge, not just for differentiation, but also a challenge to manage services of different providers for different functions in network and access. In many cases, they are pretty well coupled, and it is still to be seen that such services for network functions are interoperable. And that is really a big challenge to consider.
Actually, you raise a very, very good point, Juan Carlos. You said if you consume something as SaaS, then there is a context of differentiation, and especially if you're consuming, let's say, 5G core as a service, is there really a differentiation can you build, or how can you build that? I mean, I know you don't have to answer this question, but if there's a thought in your mind you want to elaborate a little bit, I'll really appreciate that comment.
On differentiation, you mean? Yes. Well,
how do you build differentiation into SaaS models?
Yes. Well, there will be a lot of differentiation opportunities, especially in the use of certain capabilities that are now open in the new technologies like the 5G standalone core. That is opening interfaces to program the core and access network, like the network exposure function or the running intelligent controller in the read access network. So all these elements will allow to somehow fine-tune or work on making the technology more easily configurable and manageable by the customer. Okay, and for instance, this is a case where differentiation is relevant. The way you manage these APIs for exposing network capabilities will be a differentiating factor.
Perfect. No, thank you for. I appreciate your answer on this. I thought it was really an important point that you raised, and I wanted to kind of elaborate or double click on it a little bit. All right. I think we did discuss briefly, common set of management and orchestration tools. I think it was first brought up by Nezar, and then also by both of the other panelists, Paul as well as Juan Carlos. So maybe Nezar, I'll come back to you next on this question. It says, how important is this common set of management orchestration tools to manage that cloud environment complexity?
This is the point. It is we are the multi-cloud. You are dealing with different hyperscaler, multiple combinations of edge and private and hybrid clouds, and this kind of environment, they are different from each other. There is a reason to have unified experience. We need to orchestrate the workload. Let's assume if we move from some workload from one hyperscaler to another due to enhancement in capability or due to change in the cost, this platform will give us the agility to do that. Also, it will allow us to monitor the security, monitor our consumptions, allow us to integrate and bundle between different services and different clouds. Yes.
Sounds good. Thank you. Paul, what about you in terms of how important is this common set of management orchestration tools, particularly in terms of addressing complexity?
Yeah, I think definitely for those services that span across public and private, or whether it's also different publics or different private clouds, it is really important with orchestration to address specifically a common set of security configuration policies and other configurations, and that's where it's really needed. So I think it's extremely important. But I also think that if it's not really done right and at the right level, it might also drive complexity and also challenges when it comes to manageability. So that needs to be a clearly thought through strategy on how to build that orchestration. But we see that it's maturing, and for those use cases where it's needed, definitely it must be in place.
So you're saying not only do you need a common set of tools, but you also need to do them right. Yep. Juan Carlos, what about you? What's your thought on this?
Well, I think having these tools are essential. No? It is unfeasible to think on managing such a complex environment and take the kind of decisions we will have to take in this hybrid multi-cloud environment without tools that offers you a management with high level of automation and orchestration. And it is even more relevant if you think about network availability. You may not fail. You need to have a very good control of what is happening in this cloud environment. And things will not scale if we have these orchestrations or controllers for each site, for each stack, or for each network function provider. So you need to have this common set, to have the overall view of the solution. I think that you have to take decisions every second or every minute, to be sure that every workload is in the right site with the right technology in every moment. And yes, so you will need, and again, it needs to be a tool that is not only relevant, but needs to be owned and controlled by the operators. So I think this is one of the critical parts that, in our view, an operator needs to manage on its own.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Juan Carlos. That actually makes a lot of sense. So I'm going to shift gears and come towards, one of the important aspects that we have seen, particularly in terms of cloud journey, is, how important it is to have the when the transformation happens across a particular organization, you also need to change operational policies. Perhaps even you face some cultural challenges and things like that. So my next question is on that topic is, how is your cloud transformation affecting work across those different functional teams that you have? What are, for example, some of the cultural challenges or maybe opportunities or benefits that you have seen as part of this hybrid or multi-cloud transition or transformation? Maybe I'll start with Paul first this time and then go to the others. Paul?
Yeah, no, I think this is definitely a significant area that is becoming even more and more evident the more we move into using cloud and also even into multi-cloud. And I think we are working a lot on it. And one critical point there is definitely when you split up the kind of the infrastructure operation and the service delivery following the as a service delivery model, and then you're having the application teams consuming those services, we see that that is happening, right? But it basically takes time to get into that right mode of operation. And then what we also see is that, you have the technical capabilities and building the as a service delivery models, as we discussed earlier. And when having that is in place, it really enables that more, operating model transformation. But it's not easy. And one of the reasons why it's not easy is exactly as you point to it. It takes a more cultural shift. Things like, accepting and embracing and putting automation first is really important. Moving in and practicing like more agile DevOps CI/CD processes, and not only alone but even with partners is requiring change. But when we get there, and we see that more and more, when we get there, we get those benefits that we initially also expected when moving more and more into clouds, like the operational efficiency due to the automation and way of work, including the faster time to market, leveraging these as a service delivery models. And of course, also more innovation when working with the partners. So I think definitely this is one of the most important part of the transformation that we are going through when moving things into the cloud.
Thank you, Paul. I think you raised up a very important point around automation, which we hadn't discussed before in this panel. So this is the advantage of having different people come from different backgrounds and talk about their experiences. But I'm going to pose this question next to Nezar and say, Nezar, what's your take? Paul brought up the context of automation and say, hey, that is one of the things that there's an opportunity and a benefit in terms of doing this particular cloud transformation and effect across multiple functional teams. What's your take on this?
My takeout is that it is not only about automation. It's not only about tools. It's about culture and mindset. And in order to enable automations, we need to clarify, clear the way, clear the path, and the dependencies between the people, and have a common mindset, agile mindset, and allow them to do this automation and DevOps. And I believe DevOps it's also may require some organizational change, in bringing operations to implementation and design, make them work together, break the wall between them, and also required also in the processes, and especially to get the fruit of the agilities without dependencies like supply and demand management. We need to have more agile process to make platform as a service, and this will not work with normal supply and demand management processes.
Interesting. So you're saying we need not only a cultural change, but also some of the policy changes in particular to manage around the normal supply and demand, chains don't work in this particular context. We need to build something new. That's very, very good. Thank you, Nezar. Let me come to Juan Carlos. Juan Carlos, do you see this as more acute in a multi-cloud environment, for example? Some of the cloud transformation affecting, different functional teams and some of the cultural challenges?
Of course. The multi-cloud architecture is offering, as we have seen, many opportunities, new opportunities, thanks to the dynamicity, elasticity, scaling opportunities it brings. It also comes with a lot of challenges and the need of a change in skills and mindsets in all participants. And I'm not referring only to telecom operators, but also to the stack providers and also the network function providers. On one side, operators have to acquire new skills to operate this common hybrid multi-cloud infrastructure, adopt an integrator role, because it will have to decouple infrastructure and software, and learn how to take decisions on workload placement that are the key ones, to have the workload in the right place at the right moment. The stack providers, on the other hand, will have to incorporate capabilities required by the new functions and applications. The cloud stacks were not designed for network functions, were designed for IT. And now you have to consider synchronization mechanisms, the support for acceleration features to guarantee performance, like Multus, DPDK, Azhar, IOV, and also security features that will be necessary in the network environment, like multi-tenancy or confidential computing. Okay? And finally, the network function providers will have also to evolve and start designing with a more cloud-native approach. Okay, taking into consideration portability by design, that is something that today doesn't seem to be the case, and also embracing the paradigm of modernization and evolving with infrastructure. Okay, evolving with the new versions that we see on Kubernetes, on hardware processors, on network interface cards, etc., etc. So we'll have to make an effort to keep up to date to the evolution of the cloud technology, so that the latest versions are always supported in a reasonable time frame to allow this resource sharing. So it's a challenge also for again the whole value chain and not just telecom operators.
Thank you very much, Juan Carlos. This was excellent. I really appreciate all the panelists for joining me. So there it is. You've heard, ladies and gentlemen, you've heard from Juan Carlos Garcia, SVP Technology and Innovation Ecosystems of Telefónica, Paul Grønsund, Chief Cloud Platform Architect from Telenor, and Nezar Alhuzaimi, Senior Cloud Infrastructure Consultant from Saudi Telecom. Thank you to all my panelists for spending the time with us on this Open 5G conference and sharing your thoughts on hybrid and multi-cloud strategy and why that is important. And you've really heard from all of these telcos in terms of how they are building and adopting some of these technologies and how they have this cloud-first mindset that's actually driving their transformation. Thank you very much. We hope this panel was interesting and useful. Please feel free to provide feedback and appreciate it.